If you'd asked me a month ago how my life was going, I'd have said something like, can't complain. 3 hardware stores, a paid-off house, to grown daughters. I did all right. That was before a wedding, a phone call, and a flash drive blew a hole straight through that nice little delusion. It was a Tuesday morning, house quiet, coffee on my desk, financial reports open on the screen, sunlight coming through the blinds in that clean Phoenix way that makes everything look under control. 40 years of work had gone into Reynolds Hardware. 3 locations, loyal customers, solid numbers. I actually remember thinking, this is what made it feels like. Then my cell buzzed with an unknown number. Normally, I ignore those. If it's important, they can leave a message. But something in my gut made me swipe. Hello, this is Horace. A woman's voice came through, shaky but trying to sound professional. Mr. Reynolds, this is Carolyn Thornton. I was the photographer at your daughter Jacqueline's wedding. My hand tightened around the phone. That wedding had been the most expensive day of my life. Yes, of course, Carolyn. Everything all right. Silence. Then, I really need to speak to you in person, as soon as possible. And please come alone. Don't mention this to your daughter. The air in my office seemed to thin out. Why? What's going on? I can't explain over the phone, she said, voice cracking just a little. It's something I found in the photos. Something serious. Serious. Not a file got corrupted serious. Not I blinked in every shot serious. A different kind of serious. The kind that makes your heart sit a little lower in your chest. My studio. Tomorrow morning at 9. She added, please, Reynolds. Just you. I'll be there, I said before my brain caught up. Thank you. And I'm so sorry. She hung up. I sat there with the phone still pressed to my ear, staring at the framed picture on my office wall. Jacqueline in her dress, glowing. Samuel in his tux, arm around her, perfect son-in-law smile. The photo had felt like a win when I hung it. That morning, it felt like a question mark. Wendy and Benjamin, house guests from Hell Dad, my other daughter, Wendy, stormed into the doorway like my life didn't just tilt 15 degrees. She had her phone in one hand, car keys in the other, and that look that meant this conversation was already happening with or without my input. Did you hear me? She huffed. I need money for a new car. That Honda is a joke. Melissa just got a Lexus. I can't be pulling up in that trash. Wendy is 31. 4 years ago, she moved into my guest house temporarily after her divorce. Right behind her came Benjamin boyfriend, professional couch ornament, and self-proclaimed entrepreneur who'd never actually entrepreneured anything. He'd followed 6 months later and never left. I said we'd talk later. Sweetheart, I muttered, eyes back on the spreadsheet, though the numbers had started to blur. Later, she mocked. Dad, come on. This week, the dealership said. Wendy. Later, my tone must have landed because she rolled her eyes dramatically and stomped upstairs. A door slammed like a teenager's. Peace lasted about 3 minutes. Then Benjamin strolled in without knocking, like it was his office. Hey, Pops, he said, leaning on the door frame. When says you're being weird about the car, I said we'd talk about it. I repeated, jaw tight. Yeah, but, you know. He shrugged. Happy girlfriend, happy life. Might be easier to just give her the money and keep things chill around here. He was 38. No job, no ring on my daughter's finger. Entirely supported by Wendy's money, which meant my money. I'm working, Benjamin, I said. Sure thing, boss. He grinned, pushed himself off the frame. Just think about it. He left the same way he came in, after wasting my time. I stood and walked to the window. The pool outside sparkled untouched. At the edge of the property sat the guest house I built years ago, thinking grandkids would stay there on holidays. No grandkids, just my grown daughter and her boyfriend burning through electricity and snacks like it was their job. And now there was the photographer and her serious discovery. The day dragged on. My eyes skimmed payroll, inventory, projections, but my mind was still stuck on that call. Something in the photos. Something she didn't dare say over the phone. Around 7:30 that night, the doorbell chimed. I opened it to see Jacqueline, my put-together daughter, standing there like a magazine cover. Tailored blazer, designer jeans, hair perfect. That smile she'd inherited from her mother. The one that always made me want to say yes before she even asked the question. "Hi, Daddy," she said, kissing my cheek and walking past me. I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd visit. Paradise Valley to Scottsdale is not the neighborhood, but sure. "How's married life?" I asked, joining her in the living room. "It's wonderful," she said automatically, then adjusted a picture frame on the table by half an inch. "Samuel and I are house hunting. Actually, there it was. The setup. We found this incredible place," she went on. "For bedrooms, pool, mountain view. It's literally our dream home." I waited. She smiled. "The thing is, we need to move fast. Market is crazy right now. We're just a little short on the down payment." "How short?" I asked, even though I knew I shouldn't. 40. She said it like she was asking for $40. 40,000. You know, after everything you spent on the wedding, this is just completing the picture, helping us start our life together properly. Something in my chest pulled tight. The same hollow feeling I'd had after Carolyn's call came creeping back. 40,000, I repeated. "Is that a problem?" she said. A tiny edge slipped into her tone. "Dad, we need to move quickly. I thought you'd want to help." I looked at her, really looked. The designer clothes, the manicured nails, the confident expectation in her eyes, like my wallet was just an extension of her plans. "Let me think about it," I said. Her smile flickered, just for a second. "Please don't take too long," she said, standing. "We can't lose this house. Love you, Daddy." She kissed my cheek again, colder this time, and walked out. Through the front window, I watched her Mercedes glide out of my driveway like she already owned the whole street. My phone buzzed a second later. "Thanks for understanding about the house, Dad. Love you." I hadn't agreed to anything, but she assumed. They all assumed. The night before, I tried to sleep that night, but my brain wouldn't shut up. Instead, I ended up at the kitchen counter at 3 a.m., staring at the wedding spreadsheet on my laptop. I dropped $65,000 on that day. Venue, catering, flowers, band, photography, dress, the works. Worth every penny, I told myself, to see my eldest daughter happy. But now, the tails I brushed off started to glow red. Jacqueline had insisted on cash gifts only. "Dad, we don't need plates and toasters. We're building a life. Cash is more practical." I thought that was mature at the time. She later told me they'd received around $45,000 in cash and checks from guests. I remember her laughing. "We're so blessed, Dad. People were so generous." I wrote the number down on a legal pad. Then another memory hit. My business partner, Marcus, handing Samuel an envelope at the reception, arm clapped around his shoulders. "Welcome to the family, son. Put this toward your future," Marcus had said. I'd been right there when Samuel opened at $15,000. That made $60,000 in gifts on top of my $65,000 wedding tab. I circled the total. Why did that suddenly feel less like a beautiful start and more like a payout? The studio, I left the house before Winnie and Benjamin woke up. Didn't want questions or Benjamin asking where I was gonna like it mattered. Downtown Phoenix was just waking up when I pulled into a spot across from Carolyn S. studio, a converted warehouse with her name on a brass plate near the door. Inside smelled like coffee and printer ink. Framed photographs lined the walls, weddings, family portraits, corporate headshots. Happy strangers frozen in perfect light. Carolyn met me at the door, nervous energy all over her. "Mr. Reynolds, thank you for coming," she said, locking the door behind me. "I have everything set up in the editing room." She led me to a smaller space dominated by a big monitor and enough equipment to launch a satellite. "Can I get you coffee? Water?" she asked. "I'm fine," I lied. "Just show me." She took a breath like she'd been dreading this all week. "I almost didn't call," she admitted. I went back and forth, but if I were you, I'd want to know. I didn't go looking for this. I just found it. Show me. I repeated, throw tight. She clicked a few keys. The screen filled with familiar scenes from the wedding ceremony, vows, guests smiling, all the glossy highlights everyone had already seen online. The standard shots, she said quietly. What everyone expects. What everyone remembers. Then she opened another folder labeled Pre-Ceremony Terrace. This is 2 hours before the ceremony, she said. I was testing light through the windows at the restaurant venue. I didn't realize what I captured until I reviewed everything this week. She clicked, and my world tilted. On the screen, clear as daylight, stood Samuel in his tux, jacket open, tie hanging loose. Pressed up against him was a woman with bright red hair. Not my daughter. They weren't hugging. They weren't, hey, good to see you embracing. They were locked together, his hands buried in her hair, her arms wound around his neck, kissing like the people who'd done it a lot. Not like some oops, I got nervous before the wedding accident. My fingers tightened on the back of Carolyn's chair until my knuckles went white. How long before the ceremony? I asked, though she'd already told me. 2 hours, she said softly. Here, look, she pulled up the metadata timestamps, GPS coordinates, all the digital fingerprints. Same day, same location, she said. Down to the second. This would stand up anywhere. She clicked to the next image. Different angle. Same people. More of the same. In one shot, the red-haired woman's left hand was pressed against Samuel's chest. There was a ring on it. A plain gold band and a diamond. A wedding ring. I murmured. Yeah, Carolyn said. Not your daughter's. Do you know who she is? I asked. She shook her head. I didn't recognize her from the guest list. I'm so sorry. She clicked to another photo where Samuel's face was perfectly visible. No panic. No guilt. No, what am I doing? Horror. Just calm confidence. A man who knew exactly what he was getting away with. 2 hours before marrying my daughter, Carolyn opened a drawer and pulled out a small flash drive. I copied everything, she said. The photos, the timestamps, the technical logs. I documented all of it. If you want to confront them or take legal action, this is everything. She held it out with both hands like it was a live grenade. I took it. Her eyes were glassy. I really am sorry, Mr. Reynolds. Don't apologize, I said, sliding the flash drive into my pocket. You did the right thing. When I stepped back outside, the Phoenix sun hit me like an oven door opening. But inside, I felt cold. I barely remember the drive back to Paradise Valley. My truck knew the way, even if my brain was busy replaying the images. Samuel's hands in that woman's hair, her ring flashing, his expression steady, sure, like he'd rehearsed all of it. Why go through with the wedding? Why a $65,000 ceremony to 100 guests, a dress, a band, a cake, a photographer, if you're kissing someone else 2 hours before? Why vow till death do us part if you were already breaking it in the parking lot? Unless the vows didn't mean anything. Unless something else did. Money, gifts, status, access. By the time I turned into my driveway, the flash drive in my pocket felt like it weighed 10 pounds. The house looked exactly the same as when I left that morning. Same desert landscaping, same guest house at the back, same pool. Everything looked normal. Nothing was. I opened the front door. Benjamin was sprawled in my recliner, TV blaring, beer in hand. He didn't even look up. Hey, old man, grab me another beer while you're up. From upstairs, Winnie's voice floated down. Dad, is that you? I need to talk about money for a spa weekend. I stood there in my own entryway, that flash drive burning a hole in my pocket, surrounded by people who saw me as a walking debit card. Something inside me that had been bending for years finally snapped. They thought I was the same man who walked out of this house that morning. They were wrong. This was the moment the game changed. They just didn't know it yet. When people say, the calm before the storm, they don't tell you how fake that calm feels. That night, After seeing those photos, I sat on my porch with a glass of bourbon in a silence so thick I could hear my own pulse. The pool lights glowed blue. The desert air smelled like dust and regret. I stared at the flash drive sitting on the patio table. It looked small, harmless. But that thing had the power to destroy a marriage, maybe a family. Hell, maybe my sanity. I didn't sleep. I just waited for the sun to rise and for my anger to settle into something I could use. By morning, I made a promise to myself. No more handouts. No more rescues. If my family wanted to treat me like an ATM, fine. But I was about to change the pin. Before I could move, though, I needed to be sure. Those pictures could have been twisted, cropped, or faked. I needed facts. So, I called someone who didn't sugarcoat the truth. Marcus, it's Horace, I said. Got a weird one for you. Marcus and I have been business partners for 20 years. He was rough around the edges, the kind of guy who didn't blink when things got ugly. I'm listening, he said. I need to verify some photos. Could mean my daughter's husband ain't who we thought he was? A pause. Then, text me what you've got. I know a tech guy who can dig into metadata. I sent him the files, every last one. Within an hour, he called back. Yeah, he said. It's real, H. Every damn pixel checks out. No edits, no filters, no AI. That's your son-in-law kissing a married woman 2 hours before the ceremony. My hand clenched around the phone. You sure? 100%. You want me to handle it? No, I said quietly. This one's personal. After that call, I opened my laptop, logged into my business account, and started going through transfers from the last few months. At first, everything looked fine. Vendor payments, payroll, utilities. Then, something popped out. A wire transfer. $25,000 to an unknown LLC, JS Holdings. JS as in Jacqueline and Samuel. I dug deeper. 2 more transfers. $8,000 and $12,500, both labeled as consulting fees. Consulting what? They didn't work for me. They didn't even have jobs. Someone had used my company accounts, probably Winnie or Benjamin, since both had access for family bookkeeping. I scrolled through old texts, and sure enough, there was a message from Winnie 3 months back. Dad, Benjamin needs access to QuickBooks just to help you organize year-end files. Don't worry, he's great with numbers. Numbers my ass. I opened the family group chat and looked at all the emojis, the love you, dad texts, the heart reactions. Every one of them felt like a lie. That's when I decided. I wasn't confronting them yet. I was building a trap. I drove down to Marcus's warehouse the next day. He owned a few storage units behind one of our shops. And let's just say he wasn't a stranger to surveillance gear. He tossed me a small box. Cameras, mix, and a motion sensor. All Wi-Fi sensed. You said you wanted quiet. Quiet, I said, pocketing the box. That night, while Winnie and Benjamin were out at dinner, I installed the hidden cams. One in the living room, one near the kitchen island. I wasn't looking for proof of crime. I was looking for proof of character. And within 48 hours, I got both. It was Friday night. I was in my office downtown when the alert popped up on my phone. Motion detected. I opened the live feed. Benjamin sat at the kitchen counter, laptop open. Wendy beside him with a glass of wine. Benjamin grinned. He still doesn't suspect a thing. Look at this. Payroll hits Monday, and I can move the next batch before he checks the books. Wendy laughed. You're unbelievable. He smirked. Nah, I'm just resourceful. Besides, your old man doesn't even look at his statements. Dude still uses paper checks. They both laughed. Then Wendy said something that made my blood turn to ice. Once Jacqueline gets that down payment, we'll be set. Between her wedding gifts and Dad's account, that's, 80, 90 grand total. Benjamin nodded. 85. After the car, we'll pay off the Vegas credit card, move to Florida, and let him rot in peace. Then he kissed her. That slow, lazy kiss of someone who thought he'd already won. The trap tightens by Monday. I had everything I needed. Photos of Samuel. proof of embezzlement, audio recordings. Now all that was left was timing. I called my attorney, Linda Grossman, a woman who didn't flinch at messy family business. Linda, I said, I need to restructure everything. Ownership, accounts, wills, the whole 9 yards. Her tone shifted instantly. You're serious, dead serious. All right, she said. You're going to need new trusts, new signatories, and you're going to revoke every existing power of attorney. I'll have the papers ready by Thursday. Good, I said. And Linda, yes, make sure none of them get a dime unless they're standing at my funeral. That same night, Jacqueline called again. Hey, Batty, she chirped. So any thoughts on the house? I took a slow breath. I'm still thinking. I said, Dad, please. We're really close to closing and Samuel's getting anxious. I paused, letting my tone drop just enough. I bet he is. What's that supposed to mean? She snapped. Nothing. Sweetheart, I'll let you know by Friday. I hung up before she could respond. Thursday morning, I met Linda downtown. She had everything ready, new trusts, new ownership filings, new accounts. From now on, my business assets would bypass all three of them and go straight to a scholarship foundation under my name. I wasn't taking revenge. I was rewriting the will they'd already tried to steal. But I wasn't done yet, because a man can't rebuild until he burns down the old structure. And I was ready to light the match. That weekend, Jacqueline and Samuel invited me to dinner, just family. Wendy and Benjamin were already there, loud, fake laughing at something stupid when I walked in. Samuel stood up, charming as always, Murdoch Reynolds. Good to see you, sir. Evening, I said flatly. Jacqueline pulled out a chair for me. Sit, Dad. We were just talking about how blessed we are. Yeah, I said. Blessed. Dinner went as awkward as you'd imagine. Wine, small talk, lies. Then, halfway through dessert, I said, Carolyn Thornton sends her regards. Silence. Samuel's fork froze midair. Jacqueline blinked. Who, she asked. The wedding photographer, I said casually. She took some really great shots that day, especially before the ceremony. Jacqueline's face drained of color. Samuel's fake smile cracked. I leaned back, sipping my wine. Funny thing about cameras, they don't lie. That's when Wendy jumped in. Dad, what are you talking about? I turned to her and smiled. Sweetheart, you should probably ask Benjamin. He's been doing plenty of talking behind my back. Benjamin blinked, confused. Then I played the recording. Their voices filled the room, the laughter, the wine glasses, the words moved to Florida. When it ended, nobody moved. I stood up. You all wanted something from me. You just forgot to earn it. Then I set a folder on the table, legal papers, neatly clipped. Effective Monday, you're all cut off. Every account, every card, every privilege. The guest house lease ends in 7 days. And Samuel, he looked up, pale. I sent your wife a little gift, photos she might recognize. She'll get them tomorrow. I buttoned my jacket. Dinner's over. As I walked out, no one said a word. Only the sound of my footsteps echoed down the hall, steady and final. That was the night they had learned the difference between money and value. And I learned what it meant to start over, completely alone, but finally free. When I walked out of that dinner, I expected anger, yelling, calls, maybe even tears. But for 2 full days, nothing happened. No texts, no voicemails, no surprise visits. Just silence, deep and clean. The kind of silence that only comes before someone's about to strike back. And I was ready. On Monday morning, I walked into my office and found Marcus waiting there with 2 coffees. He grinned, the way only an old friend who's seen your world collapse can. So, he said, how'd the family dinner go? Messy, I said, taking the cup, but necessary. Want to tell me the next move? I looked out the window at the sun coming up over the desert, and for the first time in years, I felt calm. I'm not moving, I said. They are. Marcus smirked. You finally mean it this time? Yeah, I said. This time, I'm done fixing people who broke themselves. That afternoon, The knock came. I opened the door to find Jacqueline, eyes red, makeup smudged, a mess I'd never seen her allow in public. "Dad, can we talk?" "Sure," I said, stepping aside. "You want coffee?" She nodded, sat on the couch, twisting her wedding ring like it was burning her finger. "I saw the pictures," she said quietly. "I figured you would," I said. Tears rolled down her cheeks. He said it was a mistake, that it was before the ceremony, that it didn't mean anything. I stayed quiet. She looked up at me, desperate. "Do you believe him?" I met her eyes. "Do you?" Silence. She broke down then, sobbing, shaking, all the walls finally crashing down. "I thought he loved me. I thought—" I knelt beside her. "Jacqueline, he loved what you came with. And when that's gone, so is he." She covered her face. "I'm so sorry, Dad. I didn't know about Wendy or Benjamin. I didn't know about the money." I nodded slowly. "But you didn't ask either." She winced. We sat there in that awful, heavy silence until she finally said, "I want to make it right. Tell me how." I handed her a small envelope. "Here's how. File for divorce, press charges if you want, and start working for me. No trust fund, no bailouts. You want your life back, you earn it." She looked stunned. "Working for you? Yep. 40 hours a week, regular pay, just like everyone else." Her lips parted in disbelief. Then she nodded. "Okay, I'll do it." I didn't smile, but inside, something settled. She was finally learning. The next day, when he showed up, and she didn't come alone, she brought Benjamin, both of them furious and loud. "Dad, this is ridiculous," she shouted the second she stepped in. "You can't just kick us out." "I can," I said, and I did. Benjamin stepped forward, that smug smirk plastered on his face. "You think you're clever, old man? We've been keeping records too." "Records?" I asked. "Yeah," he said, waving his phone. "Bank transfers, payroll, messages, enough to make it look like you've been hiding money from the IRS. You cut us off, we talk." I actually laughed. A real, honest laugh. "Benjamin," I said, "you really think I've survived 40 years in business without keeping my own receipts?" His face twitched. I walked over to my desk, pulled open the drawer, and dropped a small stack of papers on the table. "See that?" I said. "Those are your fake invoices, your forged transfers, your name signed on 3 separate forms." Wendy's face went pale. "Dad, what is this?" "Proof," I said, "of everything you and your boyfriend did with my accounts. I already sent copies to the lawyer and the bank." Benjamin's smirk cracked. "You wouldn't." "Already did," I said. "So unless you want to find out how orange jumpsuits feel in summer, I suggest you get out of my house and start figuring out where your next rent check is coming from." Wendy's eyes filled with tears. "Dad, please." "Sweetheart," I said softly, "you picked your side. Now you live with it." She looked like she wanted to argue, but Benjamin grabbed her arm and pulled her toward the door. "Come on," he muttered. As the door slammed, I exhaled slowly. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like peace, the kind you get after surgery. Painful, but clean. The son-in-law's last trick to days later, I got an email from Samuel. Subject: "You ruined my life." The message was short, mean, and misspelled, which somehow made it better. "I hope you're proud of yourself. You cost me everything. But don't get too comfortable. You'll regret crossing me." Attached was a photo of my house from the street, taken that morning. I stared at it for a long time, then forwarded it to Marcus and the local precinct. By sunset, 2 officers paid Samuel a visit. Turns out threatening messages look a lot like harassment when you already have evidence of adultery and fraud on file. He spent the night in a holding cell. I slept like a baby. By the end of the month, Winnie and Benjamin had moved out. Jacqueline started working at one of my stores, early mornings, long hours, no special treatment, and she didn't complain. Not once. At first, customers didn't recognize her, the rich girl stocking shelves and balancing tills. But when they found out who she was, the rumor spread fast, and surprisingly, People respected her for it. Meanwhile, I signed over my company's shares into the Scholarship Foundation. The name on the paperwork, the Evelyn May Trust, my late wife. She was the only one who'd ever understood the line between help and enabling. About 3 months later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Just my name written in messy handwriting I didn't recognize. Inside was a single check, $45,000, and a note for what was stolen from you. A friend. I called the bank. The account it came from? Samuel Hayes. Apparently, the court had forced him to liquidate assets during the divorce, and the funds found their way back to me. Marcus laughed when I told him. Guess karma finally got a good accountant. He said, a year later, I stood in the same spot where it all started, on that porch, coffee in hand, desert sunrise spilling gold over the rooftops. Wendy never called. Benjamin moved out of state. Rumor was he tried crypto and failed. Jacqueline stayed. She'd earned her peace, not with money, but with humility. Sometimes she'd sit beside me and say, you were right, Dad. Family isn't blood, it's loyalty. And I'd nod. Took me 60 years to learn that. People think revenge feels good. It doesn't. It's just silence after the storm. The good part comes later, when you wake up one morning and realize you don't owe anyone anything. Not money, not excuses, not forgiveness. He picks up the flash drive, now sealed in an envelope, and drops it into a drawer. That's when you know you've made peace. Not because they changed, but because you did. You ever notice how peace doesn't stay quiet for long? After a year of calm, I'd started believing maybe the storm had passed. Jacqueline was rebuilding her life. The stores were running smooth, and for the first time in years, my mornings didn't start with someone asking for money. But peace, real peace, has a short shelf life, especially when someone out there still thinks they're owed something. It was late February when it arrived. Thick white envelope, no return address. The handwriting was neat, but too formal. Inside was a single-page notice stamped in red. You are being sued for breach of financial trust and emotional damages. I laughed at first, out loud. Then I saw the name at the bottom. Plaintiff, Benjamin Harris. And right underneath, in smaller print, Legal Counsel, Taylor and Hume Law Group. He filed a civil suit claiming ID unlawfully removed shared assets from family accounts and emotionally traumatized his partner Wendy Harris through abrupt financial retaliation. Emotional trauma from getting cut off the gravy train? I read it twice, then a third time, each pass making my jaw clench harder. I drove straight to Linda's office. She took one look at the papers and exhaled through her nose like a teacher dealing with a dumb kid. Excuse. Classic intimidation tactic, she said. He's bluffing. No court's going to entertain this nonsense. Then why file it? I asked. She shrugged. Because people like Benjamin think lawsuits are just another form of blackmail. He's hoping you'll settle quietly to make him go away. I nodded slowly. He doesn't know who he's dealing with. She smiled. That's what I like about you, Horace. You don't blink. Not anymore, I said. But let's not just dismiss it. Let's end it. 2 months later, I found myself in a courtroom that smelled like old paper and bad coffee. Benjamin was there, of course, slick hair, cheap suit, that same arrogant smirk. When he sat beside him, nervous but trying to look defiant, and right behind me, quiet, steady, was Jacqueline, my daughter, my only ally left. She put a hand on my shoulder and whispered, let's finish this. The judge walked in, all robes and authority. We stood, then sat, and the circus began. Benjamin's lawyer started spinning his fantasy, Mr. Harris devoted years assisting Mr. Reynolds with his financial operations. He was promised shared compensation for his managerial contributions. When those promises were abruptly withdrawn, he suffered severe emotional and financial distress. I swear, if lying was an Olympic sport, that man would have walked out with a gold medal. When it was Linda's turn, she stood calm and precise. Your Honor, she said, we have documentation proving Mr. Harris's access to these accounts was unauthorized and fraudulent. We have voice recordings, forged invoices, and witnesses. Benjamin's face twitched. And as for emotional distress, Linda continued, the only distress here is realizing free money isn't a lifetime guarantee. Even the judge cracked a smile. Then came the part I'd been waiting for. Linda said, Your Honor, we'd like to call Ms. Jacqueline Hayes to the stand. Benjamin froze. Jacqueline walked up, composed, dressed sharp and ready. When she took the oath, she didn't even glance his way. Miss Hayes, Linda began, you worked closely with your father at his stores after your divorce. Correct, yes, Jacqueline said. I handle accounting and vendor management. And during that time, did you uncover any activity linked to Mr. Harris? Jacqueline nodded. Yes, multiple unauthorized transactions routed through a shell account under the name J.S. Holdings. Benjamin's lawyer stood. Objection irrelevant. The judge waved him off. Overruled. Continue. Jacqueline pulled out a printed spreadsheet, every transfer, every date, every fake invoice Benjamin had filed. Linda leaned on the podium. And these funds, were they ever repaid? Jacqueline looked straight at Benjamin. No. But my father doesn't need the money back. He just wanted his dignity. The room went quiet. Benjamin's face went red, then white. He whispered something to Wendy, but she stared straight ahead, hands trembling. By the time court adjourned, Benjamin's lawsuit had turned into an investigation. Forgery, tax fraud, wire misrepresentation, real crimes, real consequences. He tried to leave the building before the deputies got to him, but justice has a funny sense of timing. The moment he hit the courthouse steps, two officers stopped him. Handcuffs clicked. Cameras flashed. The man who once called me Pops was now a headline. Local entrepreneur charged in family fraud case. Wendy didn't even look back. She just walked away, slowly, quietly, like she'd finally realized how far she'd fallen. That night, Jacqueline came over with takeout and the cold beers. We sat on the porch again, the dessert sky-wide and endless. Dad, she said softly, do you ever wish you'd handled it differently? I thought about it. Really thought about it. Then I shook my head. No, if I kept protecting them, they'd never learn, and I'd never heal. She smiled sadly. I'm proud of you, even if it had to hurt. I smiled back. You're proud of yourself, kiddo. That's what matters. We clinked bottles. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a father cleaning up messes. I felt like a man who'd finally cleaned his own. A few weeks later, another envelope arrived. Same plain paper, no return address. Inside, a single line written in Wendy's handwriting. I was wrong. I'm sorry. No excuses. No explanations. Just that. I didn't reply. Sometimes forgiveness means letting silence do the talking. A year passed. The stores were thriving under Jacqueline's management. She turned one location into a training center for local teens, paid internships, career mentoring, the works. The sign out front read, Reynolds Hardware, built on honesty. Every time I saw it, I felt like maybe the pain had been worth it. One evening, Marcus came by for a beer and asked, You ever think about retiring? I grinned. Nah, I like watching people build things that last. He raised his bottle. To building, then. To building, I said. In the end, family ain't blood. It's behavior. It's the people who show up, not the ones who just show off. They tried to bury me under guilt, under love, under lies. But I remembered something my wife once said. You can't save everyone, but you can stop them from sinking you with them. He stands, walks to the mailbox, drops one last envelope inside, a check addressed to the Evelyn May Foundation. This time, the money's helping someone who deserves it. Maybe this is what peace looks like. Not perfect, just earned. A year after the courtroom dust settled, I woke up one morning and realized something strange. I wasn't angry anymore. Not at Wendy, not at Benjamin, not even at Samuel. The hate had burned out. What was left wasn't bitterness. It was space. and I finally had room to build something new. That's how the Evelyn May Foundation was born, a different kind of legacy. We started small, just one scholarship for kids in trade schools. Not college, not business majors, real, working class kids who could build or fix things, the kind of people this country still runs on. Jacqueline ran the logistics. She'd gotten good at that. Every dollar came from the stores. No investors, no advisory boards, no fancy dinners. Just hard work turned into hope. The day the first student, a 19-year-old mechanic named Luis, got his tools paid for by the foundation, Jacqueline cried. She said, "Dad, this is what Mom would have wanted," and I just nodded, because she was right. 6 months later, I got a call I didn't expect. "Dad," her voice was shaky, older somehow. "Hey, sweetheart, I heard about the foundation," she said softly. "It's beautiful." I didn't know what to say. Then she added, "I'm in rehab. I wanted you to know I'm trying. I messed up. I got lost with Ben, with money, with everything. But I'm trying for a long time." Neither of us spoke. Finally, I said, "That's enough for me, Wendy. You just keep trying. You've got my number when you're ready to talk again." She sniffled, said "I love you," and hung up. It wasn't closure, but it was a start. Sometimes starting over means starting small. A few weeks later, a letter arrived at the foundation office addressed simply to Mr. Reynolds. Inside was a handwritten note and a photo. "Dear Mr. Reynolds, my son Luis just finished his first semester at trade school. He said the scholarship made him feel like someone believed in him. I wanted to thank you. You didn't just help him, you gave me my son back." The photo showed Luis standing beside a pickup he'd rebuilt from scratch. Grease on his face, smile wide, hands proud. I pinned it to my office wall next to the last family photo I had from before the chaos. And for once, the two pictures didn't clash, they matched. Both were proof of survival. One quiet Saturday, Jacqueline knocked on my door. "Got a surprise for you," she said. Behind her was Wendy, thinner, quieter, eyes tired but alive. She stood there holding the casserole dish like it was peace offering number one. "Can I come in?" "Of course," I said, stepping aside. We ate in silence for a while. The food wasn't great, but it didn't matter. After dinner, Wendy said, "I want to help. With the foundation, I don't know where to start, but I want to be useful again." Jacqueline nodded encouragingly. I looked at Wendy for a long moment, then said, "You start by showing up on Monday, 9 sharp." She smiled for the first time in years. "I'll be early." About a month later, I got an email from the state attorney. Benjamin had taken a plea deal, 18 months in a minimum security facility for fraud and tax evasion. He'd written a letter to be forwarded to me. "Horace, you were right. I built my life on easy money. I'm not asking forgiveness, just a second chance when I get out." I finally learned that character. Pay is better than charm. I didn't reply, but I told Linda to make sure the foundation sent a set of trade school brochures to his correctional address. If he really wanted a second chance, he'd have to earn it like everyone else. The foundation's first anniversary came faster than expected. We hosted a small event, maybe 50 people, at the same hardware store where it all began. Jacqueline handled the speech. Wendy managed the scholarship booth. I just stood in the back, watching them. When Jacqueline took the mic, her voice cracked a little. "My father taught me that you can lose money and still recover, but if you lose your name, that's harder to rebuild. This foundation exists because he refused to let bitterness define him, or us." Applause filled the store. For once, I didn't hide from it. That night, after everyone left, I sat alone by the register, the same spot where I de-started for decades ago with my wife, Evelyn. I could almost hear her voice teasing me. "So, you finally got it right, huh?" I smiled and whispered, "Took me long enough." Then I noticed a small box on the counter, gift wrapped, no tag. Inside was a tiny blue USB drive. No note, no sender. I plugged it into the laptop. A slideshow started playing. photos from the foundation, Luis fixing cars, Wendy teaching bookkeeping, Jacqueline handing out tools. At the end, one sentence faded onto the screen. She'd be proud of you. I never found out who made it. Didn't matter. It was the message that counted. 2 years later, I retired for real. Jacqueline took full control of the business and the foundation. Wendy stayed on as coordinator, humble, focused, healing. Every morning, I still wake up before sunrise. Old habits die hard. I sit on the porch with coffee and think about everything that burned down and everything that grew from the ashes. Because here's the truth no one tells you about Payback. It's not about revenge. It's about rebuilding something honest after the last fall apart. That's the builder's code. Tear it down. Rebuild it right. Leave it stronger than before. I used to think my story ended when they betrayed me, but that was just the first chapter. The real story began when I decided to build again. Maybe that's what life is, learning how to turn every scar into structure, to build again, to forgive without forgetting. This isn't revenge. It's restoration, because the best payback is peace. Peace has a strange sound. It's not silence. It's the hum of something steady, trucks on the highway, a hammer in the shop, laughter echoing off old walls. That's what my mornings sound like now. 3 years since the night I walked away from everything that was poisoning me, my life runs on rhythm again. No drama, no deaths, no lies. Just the kind of quiet you can build a future on. Every morning, I drive to the foundation building, a 2-story brick place that used to be our first hardware store. The sign out front says Evelyn May Foundation, building people, not just projects. Inside, I smell sawdust and coffee, my favorite scents. Jacqueline runs the floor, clipboard in hand, like a general leading builders instead of soldiers. Wendy handles admin, answering calls, smiling more than she used to. Sometimes I catch her humming while she types, the same tune her mom used to hum while cooking. That sound alone is worth everything I lost to get here. One Friday afternoon, a young man walked in wearing a faded mechanic's jacket, grease on his hands, grin wide as the desert sky. "Mr. Reynolds?" "Luis," I said, smiling. "You clean up well." He laughed. "You kidding? I came straight from the shop. Got my own place now. 6 bays. 6. Jacqueline appeared beside me, shaking his hand. "You made it happen." He nodded. "Couldn't have without you guys. That's scholarship." It wasn't just money. It was a second chance. Then he looked at me, serious for a moment. "You told me once that the best revenge is living right." "You were right, sir. I'm living right." I patted his shoulder. "Then don't stop. Keep building." A local reporter caught wind of Luce's story and came by to interview me. She was young, sharp, full of caffeine and curiosity. "So, Mr. Reynolds," she said, "you used to run one of the biggest hardware chains in the county. Now you give it all away." "Why?" I thought for a moment. "Because I learned something expensive." I said, "You can leave your kids money, but you can't make them wise. You can buy them comfort, but you can't buy them character. So now I invest in character. The return's better." She smiled. "That's a quote. Keep it," I said. "No royalties required." The quiet visitor. That night, after everyone left, I locked up and stepped outside. The air was cool, the moon bright enough to light the parking lot. A figure stood by the gate, slim, hands in pockets. It took me a second to recognize him. Benjamin. He looked older, thinner, quieter, but sober. He walked up slowly, stopped a few feet away. "Didn't expect to see you again," I said. "I wasn't sure I'd have the guts," he replied. For a long moment, we just stood there. No threats, no shouting, no police. Just 2 men facing the wreckage of what they'd been. He cleared his throat. "I wanted to say thank you. You sent me those trade school brochures. I took a course inside, plumbing. Turns out I'm good with pipes." I almost smiled. "Figures. You always were full of leaks." He laughed, quietly, but real. "I deserve that." Then he said, "I got a job lined up when I'm out next month." Legit work. No shortcuts. Maybe someday I could stop by and volunteer. I studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Come by. We'll find you something to fix. He smiled, turned, and walked into the night. And for the first time, I didn't see a thief. I saw a man trying to rebuild. A year later, the foundation hosted its biggest event yet, the Builders of Tomorrow Gala. Hundreds came, scholarship students, mentors, old friends, even city officials. They unveiled a plaque with Evelyn's name engraved in gold. Jacqueline gave the keynote. My father taught me that forgiveness isn't about pretending nothing happened. It's about choosing what happens next. The crowd rose in applause. I stayed seated, just watching. Pride felt different now, quieter, heavier, but clean. As the night wound down, I noticed a woman standing near the back. Dark coat, hands folded, face half hidden. When our eyes met, she smiled softly, and for a second, I froze. It was Carolyn, the wedding photographer. After the ceremony, she came up and said, I never told you why I called that night. I nodded. I figured you just wanted to do the right thing. She smiled. I did. But there was more. I'd lost my own father that year. He died thinking I didn't care. When I saw the picture of your family, I saw mine. I didn't want you to lose your chance to make it right. I didn't know what to say, so I just said, thank you. You changed everything. She smiled again, touched my hand, and said, no, Horace, you did. Then she disappeared back into the crowd, and I never saw her again. Months later, I drove out to the desert where Evelyn and I used to camp when we were young. I brought 2 chairs, one for me, one for the memory of her. The sun was setting, painting everything gold and quiet. I pulled out my phone, opened a photo, my daughters, my students, my crew. We built something, Eve, I whispered. It ain't perfect, but it's honest. The wind picked up, soft and warm. Somewhere in the distance, a hawk circled. And for the first time in decades, I didn't feel alone. I started this story thinking revenge was the goal. Turns out, revenge is just an echo. Legacy, that's the voice that lasts. Maybe peace isn't the end of the fight. Maybe it's what you build after you stop swinging. He picks up a wrench, helps a student tighten a bolt, smiles. If you're still listening out there, whatever you lost, whatever they took, rebuild it. Not for them, for you, because the best revenge story ends with peace. Peace doesn't stay still. It moves through people, through time, through the things you build when nobody's watching. And sometimes it moves in ways you don't expect. It had been for years since the storm. The foundation was thriving, the store steady. But that morning, a phone call would remind me that the past doesn't just fade, it echoes. It was just after sunrise when the phone rang. A known number. Normally, I'd let it go to voicemail, but something in me said, answer it. Mr. Reynolds. The voice was soft, uncertain. This is Detective Moore, Sutter County PD. You were listed as an emergency contact for Mr. Benjamin Harris. I froze. What happened? There was an incident. Nothing fatal. He's okay, but he asked for you. I hadn't spoken to Benjamin since that night at the gate, the night he said he'd changed. Part of me thought I'd never hear his name again. But some debts don't get paid with distance. When I walked into the hospital room, I barely recognized him. He was thinner, older, his hands shaking slightly. He looked up and smiled weakly. I figured you'd come. You always show up, even when you shouldn't. What happened? I asked. Construction site accident. Broken arm, concussion. I was working legit. I swear. I nodded, sitting down. You look different. He chuckled. Yeah, turns out honest work's heavier than stealing. But it pays better. Not in cash, just in sleep. For a long moment, we sat in silence. Then he said, I've been volunteering at a rehab center, teaching plumbing to guys getting out. You started that fire, old man. Just thought you should know. I couldn't help but smile. Proud of you, Ben. He laughed softly. Hell froze over. Huh? I shook my head. Nah, maybe I finally thawed. That same week, when he came into my office looking nervous but determined. Dad, she said, there's something I want to do. Go on. I want the foundation to sponsor a women's shelter. One that helps moms get back on their feet. You know, the ones who lost everything like I almost did. She handed me a folder. Plans, costs, partnerships, everything. I flipped through it, impressed. You did all this yourself? She nodded. Yeah, and I called it Second House. You always said everyone deserves a second chance. I leaned back, feeling something shift inside me. The kind of pride that hurts a little because you know how far it came. All right, I said, let's make it happen. And we did. The day Second House opened, the parking lot was packed. Reporters, donors, families. When he stood at the podium, voice trembling but strong. There was a time I thought my story was over, she said. But my father taught me something. You don't erase your mistakes. You rebuild from them. She paused, looking at me in the crowd. And if you're lucky, someone still believes you can. Applause thundered through the air. And for the first time, I saw in her what Evelyn used to have. That quiet strength born from surviving yourself. A few months later, life decided peace had lasted long enough. A scandal broke. A donor accused the foundation of improper financial management. Social media blew up. Local news ran the headline. Evelyn May Foundation under investigation. Funds missing? Jacqueline burst into my office, pale and furious. Dad, it's a setup. Someone hacked our accounts. I stood slowly. Who? She swallowed hard. The name on the wire transfer was J.S. Holdings. That name, that damn name, it felt like a ghost reaching out from the grave. We called Linda. She brought in a cyber team. Within 48 hours, they traced the breach to a shell company registered overseas, but the IP, local. Someone nearby. When the agents came to update us, one of them said, there's a digital fingerprint. An old employee, someone named Samuel Hayes. Jacqueline's eyes widened. My ex-husband. I nodded slowly. Looked like he's back. It didn't take long to find him. He'd moved back into town under a fake name, working as a consultant for another nonprofit. When I showed up at his office, he froze. Horace, he said, forcing a smile. Long time. Not long enough, I replied. I just needed a fresh start. He said, you wouldn't give me that. So I took it. You stole from a foundation that helps people like you. I said quietly, you learned nothing. He smirked. I learned you don't forgive. So I played your game. I leaned in. No, son, you played yours. And this time, you lose alone. Linda's team had already notified the authorities by sunset. Samuel was in handcuffs. Again. That night, I sat alone in the foundation office. Jacqueline came in, leaned on the doorway. You okay? Yeah, I said, just tired. She smiled softly. Mom used to say peace isn't about everything being perfect. It's about knowing you can survive when it's not. I nodded. She was right. Guess I'm still surviving. She crossed the room, put a hand on my shoulder. No, Dad, you're living. The next morning, I got a letter in the mail. No name, just the foundation's address on the return line. Inside was a photo of 3 men in work uniforms. Benjamin and 2 young ex-cons, smiling in front of a community center. On the back, in Ben's messy handwriting, it said, the ripple's still moving. Don't stop it. People think peace means the story's over. But peace ain't the end. It's the echo. You build one honest thing, and it builds another. You help one broken soul, and they go fix to more. He stops by the wall, now covered with photos of students, families, and foundation members. He places the new picture of Benjamin beside the very first one of Louise. That's what I call payback, the kind that doesn't destroy, the kind that heals, because when you do the right thing long enough, it starts to echo, and sometimes that echo becomes your legacy. You ever notice how life tests you one last time before it lets you rest? That's where I found myself, standing at the edge of everything I'd rebuilt, wondering if peace was something you earned once or if you had to keep proving you deserved it. It was a warm afternoon in early spring. I was at the foundation, sorting through letters from scholarship applicants, when the receptionist buzzed me. Reynolds, there's someone here asking for you. Who is it? She says her name's Claire Hayes. Hayes. The last name hit like an echo. Samuel's daughter. When she stepped into my office, I saw the resemblance. Same sharp eyes, same guarded confidence. But she looked tired, like someone who'd spent too much time cleaning up someone else's mess. Mr. Reynolds, she said quietly, I'm Samuel's daughter. He passed away last month. I froze. I didn't know. She nodded. He asked me to find you. He left something for you. She handed me a small box, old, scratched, taped shut. Inside was a folded letter and a tarnished wrench with Reynolds Tools Co. engraved on it. The letter read, Horace, I spent half my life taking from people who helped me. You build things, I broke them. But before I went, I fixed something. Check your foundation account. Consider it me returning one piece of what I stole. You were right. Peace isn't about winning. It's about being done fighting. Samuel, I checked later. $85,000. Wired directly from an offshore recovery claim. He really had made it right. That night, I sat outside the foundation building under the old neon sign. Wendy and Jacqueline had gone home. The air was quiet, that kind of silence that feels alive. I held that wrench in my hands and thought about everything it represented: labor, failure, forgiveness. I used to think power came from control. Now I know it comes from release. Because when you stop trying to fix the past, you finally make space for the future to walk in. A few weeks later, we hosted the Foundation's annual gala, bigger than ever. Dozens of students walked the stage, each with their own story of rebuilding. Luis, now a mentor, spoke first. Mr. Reynolds gave me more than money. He gave me a reason to try again. Then when he took the mic, my dad taught me that every mistake can either be a scar or a story. The foundation exists so we can turn our scars into something that helps someone else. The applause was thunderous, but all I could think about was how far we'd all come from that first broken night. The betrayal, the silence, the anger. Now, it was just gratitude. A few days after the gala, I received a letter from the IRS. For a second, my old panic flared, the trauma of years of money, trust, and betrayal. But when I opened it, I laughed. It was an acknowledgement of donation, official approval of the Evelyn May Foundation as permanent nonprofit status. It was now government recognized, untouchable, eternal. The name Evelyn would live on forever, helping people who needed a hand, not a handout. That was the moment I realized I hadn't lost my family. I just rebuilt it in a different form. I used to think forgiveness meant letting people back in, but sometimes forgiveness just means letting yourself move on. We spend half our lives holding grudges, thinking we're protecting our peace, when really, we're just protecting our pain. He looks up at the foundation building, warm light glowing through the windows, laughter echoing faintly inside. Maybe peace isn't something you find. Maybe it's something you build, one honest brick at a time. Camera pans out. Horace locks up the building, walks away slowly toward his truck. The sun dips behind the horizon. They took my money. They tried to take my name, but they couldn't take my will to rebuild. And that's what made me rich. UV just finished the final reckoning, the last chapter of Horace Reynolds' journey. A man who lost everything and built something better from the ruins. Comment below. Peace is the only payback. Like, share, and subscribe to Payback File Stories, where every ending proves that karma doesn't always strike. Sometimes it rebuilds. Next story preview. My boss fired me for being too honest, so I turned his own emails against him.